me llamo Dora. Have you seen Swiper? Swiper, no swiping. We are getting back on our 22B build permanently now. We will have some RX-7 videos kind of intertwined in and maybe some other build videos for some other cars, but primary focus of the channel right now is going to be getting this thing restored and turning it into a 22B. I have ordered so much stuff for this car. We are waiting for a lot of it to get in, especially the wide body, because I can't really do too much to the car until our wide body shows up. I ordered the Lux Aero kit. For the price and for the reviews that I saw, it didn't seem like a bad kit. That kit is going to be getting molded onto the car. I have got an absolute ton of bodywork supplies and paints and all this stuff from our guys over at Eastwood for this build. If any of you guys are doing any DIY stuff, I'll have a discount code below if you want some Eastwood stuff. But they sent over their body fillers, paints, primers, coloring. We have our paint here for the car. We are doing it a World Rally Blue. That is what we could get. It is a two-stage paint, so we've got a undercoat and then a top coat, and then we've got our clear coat and obviously our primers underneath of that. So it will be a pearl paint. This will be my first time painting a pearl, but I'm excited for it. We've got guide coat, a different guide coat than what I used last time. This is a spray-on guide coat, and I didn't use enough of this when I did the RX-7, so it was a huge learning experience. So what we need to do today is completely strip the chassis of this car. That is every single nut, bolt, bracket, suspension component, clip, brake line, everything needs to come off of this car so we can start prepping this thing for paint and undercoating. The rear subframe we're gonna get dropped off at powder coat, and any of the little other brackets and doodads and bops and bits and whatnot are also going to go to powder coat. If we have time in this video, I would like to go ahead and get the roof off of this thing and go ahead and strip the, start stripping the undercoating, because that's gonna be a big task that is gonna take some time, so that way we can start treating a lot of the rust underneath the car. Eastwood did send us their rust reformer, and that stuff works magic. So to start things off, start stripping this thing down to a bare shell. Front subframe, coilovers, rear subframe, rear coilovers, diff, all of that needs to get the hell out of this car. I don't even think I have these tight. Like, they're not even tight. These lug nuts aren't even like tight on here, are they? Garbage, baby. We have a lot of work to do. Is this one actually, I'm looking up like, oh, little donut. A lot of the stuff that we're gonna be taking off is going to a good home. It's going to my buddy Kyle, who is a, they do a lot of rally driving, so they will use a lot of this stuff as spare parts, so if anything breaks, they'll be golden, but. All of the nuts and bolts sent out to zinc plating tomorrow, so I need to get everything really off this car. Is that a wheel spacer? I think the smart thing is to get some of the weight out of the rear first before we start taking the front subframe out, so that way the weight distribution of the car on the lift is still somewhat even, because we got to get the fuel tank out, the rear subframe out, the rear diff out, the rear suspension out, all this stuff. So I think for now, we're just gonna time lapse through me taking all this stuff off, because it's not gonna be the most exciting right now. And I know some of these bolts are gonna wanna fight me, so I'm gonna start stripping this thing down. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have actually taken apart the rear suspension on old Subarus, and I mean like GDs, GCs, GM6s, any of that type of stuff. When they age, they don't age well, and a lot of the suspension stuff gets stuck and you have to fight with it. In particular, there's one bolt that holds the bottom of those knuckles to two control arms, and it's a damn near impossible bolt to get out. It's such a long bolt, it has so much surfaced area to be able to rust onto the hub that they do not come out. I beat on one of them with a sledgehammer, used heat, PB blaster, didn't matter. It wouldn't come out. So it made getting the axle out a little bit difficult. Eventually we were able to get them all out, get the suspension out, drop the diff support, drop the fuel tank, and just kind of get it all out of the way. Everything out of the rear end is all out. Fuel tank, rear subframe, rear diff support, rear knuckles. The Jesus bolt got me on one of them. The other one, we got it out on. So that's that real long bolt that is in the knuckle that connects like both of the control arms back here. On this guy right here, Yeah, I couldn't, that bolt, dude, it just doesn't come out. It's like a foot-long bolt, and there's so much surface area for it to rust on that sometimes they just become impossible to take out. That's one of them, impossible to take out. Since we just got the fuel tank out of the Subaru, it's a perfect opportunity to talk to you guys about today's video partner, our guys over at Techron. We've been working with them for a long time now, and we use their stuff in pretty much all of our vehicles. The GTI, the STIs, the Tacoma gets it religiously. It gets one of these every 5,000 miles to help keep the fuel system clean. Now, what can happen over time is your fuel system can dirty from contamination, buildup, deposits, things like that that'll sit in your fuel tank. And that can cause things like decreased fuel mileage, decreased horsepower from what you may have once had, stuck fuel level sensors, a whole list of issues. This actually helped fix, I threw a couple of these in the 911 when I had it, and it actually fixed the fuel level sensor that I had in that car, which was getting stuck and was reading about a quarter tank low. After about 2 cycles of this stuff, started reading accurately again, and I was praised because I did not want to have to take out that fuel pump assembly. Pop open your fuel tank, grab your Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner. They also make a high mileage if you got a vehicle with higher mileage out there. I think it's just got a little bit stronger detergents. Pop the cap off this thing. Pick up the cap if you drop it like I did. Pop open the little foil thingy and then just let her rip. And you're gonna wanna put one of these in when you have a full tank or right before you fill up your vehicle, so that way this can mix into the fuel a lot easier. After it empties in, you just pull out the bottle, put your fuel cap back on, shut your lid, and you're good to go. Complete Fuel System Cleaner is catalytic converter safe, it's O2 sensor friendly safe, and it'll treat up to 20 gallons. We are going to be using a bottle of that stuff immediately in the Subaru once we get this thing up and running, because we are going to be putting a 2005 STI fuel tank in this thing, and with it being what, 15, 19 years old now, those fuel tanks. So with those older fuel tanks, we just want to make sure that we have a good one going in. We'll clean it with our first tank of fuel, and then we'll continue to use fuel system cleaner once every 5,000 miles on this thing as well. So there will be more information down below in the video description for you guys. Now let's get back to the video. Now we need to get the front subframe out. Front coilovers out. I've got all the brake lines out. Also, I'm gonna drop off all those at powder coat. We need to get all of the bushings out of the rear differential brace right there and the rear subframe before I can take those to powder coat. So we'll probably burn those out. It's not fun to get old bushings out, but since we're doing all this and we're having it all powder coat and we're having it all clean, we're gonna put new bushings in literally everything. This car is gonna be essentially a brand new 1998 STI. 2-door STI. It's gonna be gnarly. It's gonna be wicked. It's gonna be sick. It's gonna be radical. It's gonna be tubular. It's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be poggers. I think that's all the radicals I can think of. Let's strip the front end apart. The front suspension all came out a lot easier than the rear. Probably because it was covered in oil with how much that this engine was leaking. Now, after we got that out, there was a ton of clips going around the engine bay that we tried to salvage as many of them as we could by pulling them out without breaking the clips. There were a whole bunch of broken bolts that I was dealing with using a torch, PB blaster, some vice grips, just to try to get them out so that way we could save the threads in some of these holes so we didn't have to go back through later and repair a lot of these old broken threads. We have the Subaru pretty much stripped down to a bare shell. Not a single nut, not a single bolt on here. From here, what we're gonna actually do is take the roof off. So this is going to go to the guys next door. They're going to make a mold out of this to make a carbon fiber roof. They're gonna weld in the sunroof so that way they can do all the body work to make it smooth, make a mold off of it, carbon roof on this thing. So what we're gonna do is go through and drill out every single one of these spot welds. And then underneath on the roof support structures that run across, we need to separate the panel bond, which heat and probably a scraper spatula to get all that off. But as you guys can see, there's nothing left. There's some clips we are leaving in because they're gonna just absolutely demolish themselves if we take it out, which is not a big deal. But everything, it's just literally a bare shell at this point, which is exactly what we wanted. No glass, no windows, not a single nut, not a single bolt. I'm gonna send all of the hardware out to get zinc plated tomorrow, so that way we can get that stuff back in a timely manner. And more stuff's been dropped off at powder coat. So I guess let's try to take a roof off, Levi. I will say, I've watched a lot of videos of people taking roofs off, right? And they make it look so easy. They make it look so easy just to take a roof off a car. That was not easy by any means. There are probably 100 spot welds that hold the roof on, and it's really only spot welds. There's some seam sealer along the roof channel, but outside of that, there's just like foam detonating on the top of the crossbars. Now, normally whenever you'd go to take a roof off, you would put in like a support brace that runs across. We didn't feel the need to do that because we have 3 of them already still welded to the chassis, and the chassis did not distort or move at all. We've already taken measurements, it's all still good. So that's gonna be a lot of fixing to do what we just did before we can put a new roof on here. With taking the roof off, like there is, like you guys can see all of the spot welds we had to drill out, and it goes all the way around even the front. And the front was really hard to even try to find the spot welds because there was so much rust built up that you couldn't even see where they were at. So you kind of had to do a little bit of guesstimating, and it did kind of hurt some of the metal up here. It's not a big deal. We can reform it back flat, and then we are going to weld all of these holes back up with my MIG welder. But before we can do any of that, that'll probably happen in the next video. We need to cover the entire car with some rust reformer and some rust encapsulator to make sure that we can kill all the rust now before we start sanding, wire wheeling, and welding and getting all that, because we don't want this rust to stay in here. I want to make sure that this car is as rust free as we can actually make it, and I'm glad that we took the roof off because, as you guys can see, there was rust starting to form all the way along all of these channels. There's some in here. There's a good amount under the car. It's all surfaced rust, and it's nothing that's rot rusty yet, but we still do need to fix that. So after reading Eastwood's Rust Encapsulator Plus, what we need to do is knock down the rust that we can visually see with a wire wheel. After all the loose rust has been knocked off, we're gonna apply the rust encapsulator to the surface, and then after 4 hours, we're gonna do another light coat on top of that. Then we need to let that sit for 48 hours before we can actually really do anything to the car. So it's gonna take a little bit of time to really kill off and encapsulate the rust, but it's gonna be such a good thing to do it now, so that way we don't have to stress about it later. All the rust has been taken care of, and we have a good chassis to work with. So before we can really start a lot of the bodywork stuff, we need to kill all the rust, especially in these areas like up on the roof and underneath areas that are never gonna be seen again, because we don't want that rust to continue to spread. We don't want it to continue eating away at the chassis, and we want this thing to last another 300,000 miles. So let's get to it. Oh man, I thought we could just like apply it on. It's all right. We'll hit it with a wire wheel, we'll clean it, we'll encapsulate it. We'll start on the roof, jump to the interior, jump to the trunk, the engine bay, then do the bottom side of the car. I've gone through and I got this thing pretty coated with the rust encapsulator in all of the spots that I could visually see that had some rust that we needed to hit. Now, in 48 hours, this will be a sandable and paintable surface, but like I said, we're gonna wait for all of that. Today is just getting this thing, or this video in general is just getting this thing ready for all the bodywork we're about to do to it. So I also went ahead and hit inside the frame rails on each side, because those are not spots that are obviously easily sandable to be able to get any rust out. So by putting that rust encapsulator in there, it'll encapsulate that rust, stop it from spreading, and help prevent some future rust from forming inside of the frame rails, which is exactly what we want. Now I might go to the extent of using a little bit of a funnel and maybe feeding it down into the frame rail through some of these holes, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I've gone around the car and hit up a whole bunch of other spots. That entire frame rail, as you guys remember, was straight rust. So the encapsulator will encapsulate that rust and we can get all that fixed. We'll sand all of it smooth, grind it all smooth, get the frame rails looking nice. I'm gonna try to find a junkyard where I can find an OEM battery tray for right here. We'll see, maybe I'll just weld something up and we'll just do like our own little intercooler pipe or something. I don't know quite yet. We are gonna have to weld up the antenna, which is just fine. In the next video, we're gonna be doing a lot of welding to fill stuff like this. We have to fill every single spot weld that we drilled out going along the roof. I will probably reinforce these with a little bit more weld just to ensure that it's not gonna distort, move, or anything like that. I did the same thing on the rear car. filled the frame rails with that rust encapsulator from Eastwood just to make sure that our frame rails are going to be nice and clean and live a long time. Also, in the background of things, I've been getting a lot of parts in for the Subaru. These are headlights. I couldn't find a set of reasonably priced clear headlights, so Depot's fine. Depot is an OE manufacturer anyway, so I'm not stressing it. They're just the clears. These are OEM taillights. I've been sending a lot of stuff out to powder coat. We've got our Brimbos back. We've got a whole bunch of brackets, braces. Up there, we've got all of our brake lines, heat shields, dash bar, windshield wipers, all that stuff ready to go for the car. So this time, when we go to paint this thing, we're not gonna be waiting on parts. Unfortunately, that's all I can do for right now. We've got our rust encapsulator on the car, but I can't start grinding or welding any of that until it cures, which I can come back tomorrow and get started on a lot of it. We're gonna start stripping the undercoating. I'm gonna grab some more dry ice so that way we can wrap up getting the sound deadening out of the interior, and from there, it's gonna be a lot of grinding, it's gonna be a lot of wire wheeling, and it's gonna be a lot of prepping this chassis for primer and paint. I am not looking forward to the prep part, but I am looking forward to the actual like painting and whatnot, and molding the wide body on and all that fun stuff, because that's something I've never done before. So the RX 7 taught me a lot about doing some of these restos and kind of the order in which you need to do some of it. This one's gonna teach me a lot more. I've never been a big bodywork guy. I do not like bodywork. I despise it, but it's a good skill to have. It's a good skill to learn. So we've got a ton of different bodywork stuff in there to choose from. We've got way more guide coat, better guide coat than I was using last time on the RX 7, because there are some imperfections that I see on the RX 7. You guys told me not to worry about it, and they're not really a big deal. But to me, I just wanna do better. I just wanna do it better. So with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. We have achieved our goal of stripping this thing down to a literal shell. The only things that are literally left on this car body-wise are the rear fenders, and we're gonna be cutting those out as soon as we get our wide body in. So with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you're hyped for the 22B build, that's gonna be gnarly, dry sump, rotated kit. It's gonna be wild. But hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, cyan, whatever color turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you wanna be able to put it in one of these corners, no idea which one quite yet, but with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.